Hi there, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Watched by Ashley. Today I wanted to spend some time with you and share my thoughts on Thor Love and Thunder, the fourth installment of the Thor movies. So this movie was highly anticipated and I was definitely looking forward to seeing it, so I'm really excited to share my thoughts with you. So let's get into it. So Thor Love and Thunder is a movie that I was highly looking forward to, and I was so excited, especially since I loved Thor Ragnarok. I thought it was an amazing film, and I couldn't wait to see what else Taika Waititi and Chris Hemsworth had in store. Um, but I'll be honest with you, I was a bit disappointed with the film. I thought that there was a lot of anticipation, and I think a lot of fans were like me, hoping for more Thor Ragnarok. And in some sense, they did give it to us, but I think the execution kind of felt a bit flat. And I'd like to really delve into the things that I feel really brought the film down. So, one of the main things is the cast. This film had a huge help in terms of casting and star power versus Thor Ragnarok. We had Natalie Portman, who is a shining star in her own light, returned as Jane Foster. We had Russell Crowe join the cast as Zeus, and we had Christian Bale make his MCU debut as Gore, the God Butcher. So these are very strong actors in great roles to support Chris Hemsworth. That's how it should be. It should be supporting Chris Hemsworth in this film. And to be honest with you, I don't think it felt like a Thor slash Chris Hemsworth film. I do feel like he was a supporting actor, and there were breakout performances from some actors and disappointing performances from others. So, breakout performance, of course, would be Christian Bale. I mean, everyone loves Christian Bale. He won the hearts of many by playing Batman. And for those who wanted a critical performance, I mean, his work as in The Machinist and all that weight he lost, showing his dedication to his craft. Anything he does, you're holding your breath with anticipation to see what he would do. And I know as a fan, when I heard that Christian Bale was joining the MCU, I was very curious to see in what capacity. In my opinion, they have underutilized Christian Bale. He is a very skilled actor, and his performance was breakthrough. He's a highlight of the movie for sure. This movie feels really disorganized, and although Christian Bale was the villain and there is a plot with him and he has a motive, it didn't feel like the focus of the film. And I think that lack of focus is why the film was not successful. So the film kind of feels like it's trying to deliver a certain message through the storytelling of Almighty Thor, Jane Foster. And by telling her story, I feel like this should have been like a solo movie for Jane Foster and Almighty Thor and not a Thor movie. Because it feels like a lot of the focus is on the fact that she has stage 4 cancer and she's trying really hard to overcome it. She tries to overcome it with science, it doesn't work. And she feels that Thor's hammer, the hammer of Thor, is calling to her. Mjolnir is calling to her, and she has to answer that call. And she goes to the hammer. It reassembles itself, and she is able to wield it, and she is Almighty Thor. She's so almighty, she's an even better version of Thor than the original Thor. And I have a bit of a bone to pick with that. Like, I know that we want to portray women as strong characters who aren't limited by their gender, and that's great. But I think they overpowered her. They steered a little too much overcorrection for this character. She was already a brilliant scientist, and now they've endowed her with magical powers, and she's kind of overpowered in a sense. Like, we didn't get a sense that she struggled at all to become Thor, right? But then uh, the conventional Thor had a whole movie trying to find his footing. He really tried to develop himself into someone who's worthy. Versus Jane, she kind of starts wielding the hammer and she's already worthy, right? And I don't feel like there was enough of a struggle in that character, because by making her shine so much, the actual Thor Odin's son, he doesn't have, like, he seems like he's lost as well. Like, what's his role in the movie? Like, he's just an inferior Thor, actually, and he is trying to get Stormbreaker to work with him, and he's struggling. He's struggling throughout the film, and it's just that she has it all together. Sure, you could say he was put off his game because, oh no, he's so in love with Jane, but like, I don't know. I felt like that's a bit of a stretch, and as much as he loves her, I don't think loving someone should make you weak, and that's something that took away from this movie. Is the way that they chose to tell this story. I didn't like it. I didn't find it enjoyable. Thor just came off of beating Thanos. You know, he should be confident. Like he just, I know he went through the insecure phase when he was Fat Thor. He lost the weight. He should be confident. Like I wanted a fun movie. This movie was really kind of depressing. It was down, like the whole cancer thing. Like I understand it's real life, but I just feel like it's not what we, well, not the kind of story you came for, in my opinion. So that was kind of a weird direction. I mean, although we had Taika Waititi again as the director, I thought like we would get more of Thor Ragnarok, especially because he's actually a co-writer on this film, and it fell flat. And in the areas that they could have really improved on, they just didn't. And another example of that would be King Valkyrie. As her development in the MCU, like I understand her becoming king. Like she was so badass in Thor Ragnarok, right? She even helped out in Avengers Infinity War. Like she was just such a badass warrior. She was the definition of a warrior, right, in their culture. And she was so formidable. No one could challenge her. She was a king. I understood that. I got that. That was cool. No problem. Then they decided behind the scenes that they wanted to make the character a queer character, which again, fine, cool, no problem. But in this movie, it just kind of felt like a trope. Like it felt like, oh, she's King Valkyrie. Okay. But she didn't really, she's bored of being the ruler of Asgard. She has very little interest. She goes to find the kids after they've been kidnapped. And after being injured, she doesn't go back, right? Like, sure, you could say she was hurt, right? But she's supposedly this warrior who wants to go to Valhalla, and there's a bunch of kids from your domain missing, and you're just like, I'll sit it out. I might actually die. Well, isn't that what you're supposed to want to do? Like, shouldn't you want your glory to be from saving these children? And she passed up on that opportunity. And I really feel like Disney kind of betrayed the character. You know, like you just wanted to have someone to check off a box, but you didn't really develop them or go back to what you already established. Like she should have been back to back with Thor to the end. That's their relationship, right? Like that's the type of relationship they're trying to establish. That she's always up for a fight, and she just didn't do that. And it's like Thor ended up having to do a lot of the heavy lifting at the end just because the two female characters kind of like tapped out. The other thing that I didn't especially like, I thought it was kind of cheap in the movie, was that they recycled the same trope from Thor Ragnarok in terms of having Matt Damon and Luke Hemsworth show up playing Thor and Loki. It worked in the Thor Ragnarok. It was a great surprise, great cameo, but then to do the exact same thing again, it was kind of lame. Like, you know, either you could write something else that's creative and have another big star in it, or have different stars. Like, it just felt so recycled, so cliche, and it's your own movie. Like, I just didn't understand the thought process in that. That was kind of lame. And I feel like they're like, oh yeah, Marvel fans, you like this? Let's give it to you again exactly the same way. And that's really cheap. And to assume that your fans are gonna want that, I didn't agree with that. The other thing that made no sense and kind of just like baffled me was this whole idea of thinking that having Korg narrate the movie, it got really old really quick. Again, it took away from it. There's like this movie is very disjointed. There's a scene where Korg ends up losing his body, and they end up tying his head to Lady Valkyrie through her hair. And it's kind of like almost like a Korg cam, and you're seeing everything from Korg's perspective. That also like is a totally different kind of direction for the film, and it kind of takes you out of it. Like, I don't know who told Taika Waititi that having Korg as a central character was a great idea. Like the other movie, it worked because he had like minimal parts. I thought it was okay. He had like a New Zealand accent. Like okay, it was like interesting, giving you a bit of diversity in terms of the New Zealand culture, sure. But then to have him narrate a chunk of the movie and that last story with Korg, I felt like it was a bit too much. It was a bit too heavy handed with the two becoming two dads thing. Like, that's not, I don't know. I feel like that's not the kind of movie people came to see. And they roped in fans of Thor and gave them a whole bunch of things that they didn't necessarily want. I know that they're trying to appeal to everybody, but I do think that when you try to appeal to everyone, you end up you end up segregating your audience, right? Like you're going to end up leaving some people out. By being so inclusive, you end up missing the mark. So I think Marvel and Disney, they're going down a path where their desire to be inclusive is going to turn off the people that actually made them successful. So you have the the comic book fans, people who actually enjoy reading comics, who love these characters the way they are. Their characters are either being gender swapped, race swapped, um, their sexual preferences are being exploited. Like, I think that is a bit much. I know that you want to have diversity for everybody and for everyone to feel included, but at the same time, you're changing these characters, you're changing the stories, and I don't think that's necessarily the best thing. I think that if you want to have these inclusive stories, make new characters, right? Like, I think that don't kind of change all the secondary characters and say that, oh, well, we're still giving you Thor, but you're changing the kind of direction of the story, right? Like, I think if DC actually like gets their stuff together and is the anti-Marvel and actually gives fans what they want, they're going to see a shift. And the thing is, the numbers don't lie, right? So this movie came out in a year where there weren't very many comic book movies. There weren't really any blockbusters, right? There's only like 3 or 4 big movies that came out in the summer of 2022. And this is the post-COVID era. Um, and although the movie did make over $758 million, it had a bigger budget than Thor Ragnarok. The budget on this movie was $250 million. This did not feel like a $250 movie. The script I felt was like lazy writing, and maybe the budget went towards the big actors that they had, but it did not perform as well as it could have and should have. I mean, for reference, Thor Ragnarok had a budget of $180 million and brought in over $854 million. It's a much better return on your dollar. And there wasn't competition for Thor Ragnarok. It should have lasted a lot longer in the theater. It should have performed much better. To be honest with you, I'm glad I didn't go to theaters to watch this movie, and I'm an avid moviegoer. I watched it on Disney Plus, so I didn't have to spend out of pocket for it, but it's not a movie I would recommend. So I guess that's the score. It's not a movie I would recommend. It doesn't even do anything to push the story forward. Uh, and if I was to rate it, it would probably be, to be generous, 3 out of 5 stars. Um, and like I said, it doesn't do anything for the main story. Like, you could skip this movie and it wouldn't make a difference. Um, so it's just an interesting choice that the direction that they chose to take. I feel like they pre-greenlit a 5th movie for this franchise, and I don't disagree with that. I do love Thor. I love Chris Hemsworth. I think maybe they need a different director. And they really need to think about the direction they're going in. Like, the idea of doing more God stories, it's very intriguing, very interesting. But I just, like, this movie goes into Thor the Dark World territory. Like, it worries me because, like, they did such a great job changing around Thor with Thor Ragnarok that they just went backwards. And I hope that they realize what they did to go backwards, because I know they're just going to say that, oh, it's a minority of fans that uh, don't like it, or oh, it's because of COVID that we didn't make the money that we should have made. But look at Top Gun Maverick; it destroyed the box office. So it's not to say people aren't willing to spend money to go watch movies in theater. I just think that if you have an unclear message and you don't have a direction that you're going in, um, you're gonna miss out, because people need to know exactly what what you stand for, or what your goal is. And this movie, it doesn't have that. I think that, like I said, they're trying to make everybody happy. You got your Thor, right? You got your big strong guy on the camera. You have a brilliant female in Jane Foster, who's also very strong and powerful. You have your queer person in Tessa Thompson, in King Valkyrie, and you have a gay person in Korg, and I don't even know if person is a stretch since it's a pile of rocks. So yes, it's diversity, it's inclusion, but is it too heavy-handed is the question I would ask. So those are my thoughts. I know that some of them might not be agreeable, but that's what I think, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave me a comment. Let me know your thought on the film, and we can continue the discussion in the comments below. Until next time, take care. Bye.